The morning sun cast long shadows across the metal corridors of Kepler 7 station as Kim Tae walked toward the administrative office. His heavy boots made steady sounds against the polished floor. Other instructors moved past him, their clean uniforms and neat appearances making his worn jacket and scarred hands look out of place. Kim Tae had been at the Galactic Survival Academy for 3 months now. He still felt like a stranger among the other teachers. Most of them came from peaceful worlds where the biggest danger was a power outage or a minor storm. They taught theory and used computer simulations. Kim Tae had learned his skills the hard way, on planets where one mistake meant death. The door to Admiral Lee Dong's office slid open with a soft hiss. Admiral Lee sat behind a curved desk made of some alien material that changed colors as Kim Tae approached. The older man looked up from a stack of data tablets and smiled. "Kim Tae, good to see you. Please, sit down." Kim Tae took the chair across from the Admiral. Lee Dong was one of the few humans in high positions at the Academy. He had been instrumental in bringing Kim Tae here after his retirement from Earth's Special Forces. "I have a new assignment for you," Admiral Lee said, sliding a data tablet across the desk. "Basic planetary survival. 12 students, mixed species, 2-week course." Kim Tae picked up the tablet and scanned the information. The course description seemed straightforward enough. Water procurement, shelter construction, food identification, hazard avoidance, standard survival training. "Looks simple enough," Kim Tae said. "When do I start?" Admiral Lee's expression grew slightly concerned. "Tomorrow, Kim Tae. I should warn you about this particular class, okay? These students come from very different backgrounds than you might expect." Kim Tae looked up from the tablet. "Different? How?" "Well, for example, a Vexter student is from Crystalis Prime. The most dangerous thing on that world is a temperature change of 2 degrees. The Quintal Cadet comes from an ocean world where the biggest predator is about the size of your thumb." Kim Tae frowned. "What about the others?" Admiral Lee touched the tablet screen, bringing up student profiles. "The Morden student is from a world where all life forms are herbivores. Co-Cadet exists in a gaseous state and has never encountered solid matter dangers. The Elena student comes from a low-gravity world where the strongest weather is a light breeze. So they're all from easy worlds," Kim Tae said, still not seeing the problem. "Very easy worlds," Admiral Lee emphasized. "These students have never faced real danger. Most of them signed up for this course because they thought it would be simple. They expect to learn about emergency beacon activation and how to call for rescue." Kim Tae set down the tablet. "But that's not survival training. That's just ... waiting for help." "Exactly. That's why I'm giving you this assignment. These students need to learn real survival skills, but they have no idea what that actually means." Admiral Lee stood up and walked to the window overlooking the Academy's training grounds. Below, students from various species practiced with advanced equipment under controlled conditions. "The other instructors have tried teaching this course before," he continued. "Professor Velta from Harmony Station taught it last semester. He spent 2 weeks showing students how to operate emergency shelters and call for rescue. The students loved it, but they learned nothing useful." Kim Tae joined the Admiral at the window. "What do you want me to do differently?" "Teach them real survival skills, the kind that will actually keep them alive if they're ever stranded on a hostile world." Admiral Lee turned to face Kim Tae. "Be prepared. These students think they know what survival means, but they have no idea what they're getting into." Kim Tae nodded slowly. "I understand. Basic survival training, the way humans do it." "The way humans do it," Admiral Lee agreed. "Just remember, what's basic to us might be advanced to them." After leaving the Admiral's office, Kim Tae walked through the Academy's corridors toward the instructor's lounge. Other teachers nodded politely as he passed. He had learned their names over the past months, but he still felt like an outsider. The lounge was a comfortable space with chairs adapted for various alien body types. Few instructors sat around a circular table, discussing their courses over cups of different beverages. Kim Tae recognized Professor Zintel, who taught advanced mathematics, and Dr. Morvan, who handled stellar navigation. Kim Tae, Professor Zintel, called out as he entered, "I heard you got the basic survival class." Kim Tae poured himself a cup of coffee from the human dispenser. "That's right, starting tomorrow." Dr. Morvan, a tall insectoid being with 4 arms, made a clicking sound that Kim Tae had learned meant amusement. "Good luck with that group. I had some of those students in my navigation class. They're nice enough, but they've never faced anything more challenging than a difficult exam. The Vexter student actually asked me if there was a way to make space travel safer," Professor Zintel added. When I explained that space is inherently dangerous, they seemed genuinely surprised. Kim Tae sat down at the table. How dangerous could their worlds possibly be? The Crystallis Prime student lives in a city where the temperature never changes, Dr. Morvan explained. All food is grown in perfect conditions. There are no predators, no diseases, no natural disasters. Their biggest worry is choosing what color their living space should be. And the Ocean World student has never seen land, Professor Zintel continued. Their entire species lives in underwater cities with complete environmental control. They've never even experienced weather. Kim Tae sipped his coffee, beginning to understand the challenge ahead. So when they signed up for survival training, they thought it would be about using technology to stay comfortable. Dr. Morvan finished. They have no concept of actual survival. The previous instructor gave them a course on equipment maintenance, Professor Zintel added. They learned how to repair their environmental suits and how to use emergency communicators. They thought that was survival training. Kim Tae stood up, suddenly understanding why Admiral Lee had chosen him for this assignment. Well, they're about to learn what survival really means. The next morning, Kim Tae arrived at training facility 7 early. The space was designed to simulate various planetary environments with adjustable gravity, atmosphere, and terrain. He had requested a basic setting that resembled a temperate Earth forest as he checked his equipment. Kim Tae thought about the lessons he had planned. Water, procurement, and purification, basic shelter construction, food identification and preparation, hazard recognition and avoidance. To him, these were fundamental skills that every intelligent being should know. The door chimed, and his first student entered. The Vextar cadet was a being of living crystal, roughly humanoid in shape, but translucent and glowing with internal light. They moved with careful, precise steps, their crystalline feet making soft, chiming sounds on the floor. "Good morning, Instructor Kim Tae," the student said, their voice like wind chimes. "I am Vextar, and I am very excited to learn about survival techniques." More students filed in over the next few minutes. The Quinto cadet wore a full environmental suit filled with moisture, their aquatic form visible through the transparent material. The Morton student clicked and buzzed softly, their insectoid features alert and curious. The gaseous Sprinkle cadet existed within a containment suit that glowed with their internal energy. The reptilian Yolana student moved with fluid grace, their scaled skin reflecting the facility's lights. 7 more students entered, each from worlds that Kim Tae was beginning to realize were incredibly peaceful compared to Earth. They all carried pristine equipment that looked expensive and unused. Their attitudes were confident and relaxed, like students attending a regular academic class. "Welcome to Basic Planetary Survival," Kim Tae said, standing before the group. "I'm Instructor Kim Tae, and for the next 2 weeks, you'll learn skills that might save your life if you're ever stranded on a hostile planet." The students looked at each other with amused expressions. A few seemed to be suppressing what Kim Tae guessed were their species' equivalent of laughter. "Before we began," Kim Tae continued, I want to know what you expect to learn in this course. The Vexstar student raised one crystalline arm. We expect to learn about proper equipment use and emergency procedures, how to maintain our environmental suits and contact rescue services, and how to identify safe areas for landing and setting up emergency camps, added the Quinto cadet. Their voice bubbling through their suits. Speaker system. Kim Tae nodded slowly. I see. Well, we'll be covering some different topics. We'll start with the most basic survival need, finding and purifying water. The students looked confused. The Morden cadet's antennae twitched nervously. Purifying water. Don't we just use the purification tablets in our emergency kits? What if you don't have tablets? Kim Tae asked. What if your equipment is lost or broken? The silence that followed told Kim Tae everything he needed to know about what these students considered possible. They had never imagined surviving without their technology. Okay, you'll learn how to find water, test it for safety, and make it safe to drink using only materials you can find in nature, Kim Tae announced. Kim Tae led his 12 students through the Academy's training facility toward the environmental simulation chamber. The students chatted quietly among themselves, their voices mixing in a symphony of different languages and sounds. Cadet chimed softly with each step, while the Morden student made small clicking noises that seemed to be their version of nervous laughter. This chamber can simulate any planetary environment, Kim Tae explained as they walked. Today, we'll be working in a basic forest setting with a water source. The Quinto cadet bubbled through their suit speaker. Will we be using the standard water purification equipment from our emergency kits? No, Kim Tae said simply. We'll be using methods that work when you have no equipment at all. The students exchanged glances. To Yelena cadet, whose reptilian features showed confusion, spoke up. But why would we not have equipment? Doesn't rescue always come with proper supplies? Kim Tae stopped walking and turned to face the group. What if rescue doesn't come? Right. What if your ship crashes and your equipment is destroyed? What if you're stranded for weeks or months? The silence that followed was uncomfortable. These students had never considered such possibilities. Their world was so safe that the idea of being truly alone and helpless was foreign to them. Today, you'll learn the first rule of survival, Kim Tae continued. Never depend on anything except your own knowledge and skills. The simulation chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, Kim Tae had programmed a temperate forest environment. Tall trees created a canopy overhead, and sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden beams. The air smelled of earth and growing things. A small stream bubbled nearby, its water looking dark and uninviting. The students stepped into the chamber. Cautiously, most of them had never been in a natural environment before. The Vexstar cadets' crystalline forms sparkled in the dappled sunlight, but they seemed nervous about the uneven ground. The gaseous Brenko cadet's containment suit hummed louder in a different atmosphere. Beautiful, isn't it? Kim Tae said, breathing deeply, which is what most planets look like before they're developed. It's so, wild, whispered the Morden cadet, their compound eyes taking in every detail. Nothing is controlled or organized. Kim Tae walked to the stream and knelt beside it. The water was clear, but had a slight brown tint from fallen leaves and organic matter. Tim, it looked like typical wilderness water that would be safe after proper treatment. First lesson is about water, he said, gesturing for the students to gather around. This stream looks clean, but appearances can be deadly. Water that looks perfect can kill you faster than no water at all. The students moved closer, though several kept their distance from the muddy bank. The Quinto cadet seemed particularly disturbed by the natural water source. In my species' understanding, the Quinto cadet said, water is either pure or poisonous. There is no middle ground. That's not how it works in nature, Kim Tae explained. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small kit of chemical test strips. These will tell us what's in the water. But first, let's look at what we can see. He pointed to the stream's surface. See how the water moves? Fast-moving water is usually safer than still water. But see those leaves decomposing on the bottom? That means bacteria and other microorganisms. The Vexstar cadets' form flickered with distress. You mean this water contains living organisms? Millions of them, Kim Tae said matter-of-factly. Most are harmless, but some can make you very sick or kill you. Several students took a step back. Concept of invisible living things in water was horrifying to species that had never encountered such dangers. Kim Tae dipped a test strip into the water and waited for the colors to change. The pH is acceptable, and I don't see signs of heavy metals or industrial contamination. But we still need to treat it before drinking. He stood up and began gathering materials from the forest floor. Dry leaves, small stones, sand, and pieces of cloth from his kit. The students watched in fascination as he began constructing what looked like a simple funnel system. This is a basic filtration system, he explained, layering the materials carefully. The cloth catches large particles, the sand filters out smaller ones, and the charcoal removes many chemical contaminants. Charcoal? The Alana cadet asked. Where do we get charcoal? We make it, Kim Tae said. He began gathering dry wood and tinder. First, we need fire. The word fire caused an immediate reaction among the students. The Brinko cadet's containment suit began beeping warnings. The Morden cadet's exoskeleton started making stress clicks. Even the usually calm Vexstar cadet began flickering rapidly. Akaya is uncontrolled plasma, the Brinko cadet said through their translator. It's extremely dangerous. Only if you don't know how to handle it, Kim Tae replied. He knelt down and began arranging the tinder and kindling. Akaya is one of humanity's oldest tools. Every human child learns to make and control fire. Kim Tae pulled out a piece of flint and steel. The students watched in amazement as he struck them together, creating sparks that caught in the dry tinder. He blew gently on the smoking material until small flames appeared. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. 3 students backed away so quickly that they nearly fell over. The Quintile cadet's suit began emergency cooling procedures. The Vexstar cadet made a sound like breaking glass. To create combustion reactions with primitive tools, the Vexstar cadet said, their voice shaking, using only manual manipulation. It's not that hard once you learn how, Kim Tae said, feeding small sticks to the growing fire. The key is controlling the oxygen flow and having the right materials. He demonstrated how to build the fire gradually, adding larger pieces of wood as the flames grew stronger. The students watched from what they considered a safe distance, which was nearly at the chamber's wall. Now we make charcoal, Kim Tae said, placing some wood pieces at the fire's edge where they would burn slowly without full oxygen. Well, that's happening. Let's set up our filter. He poured the stream water through his improvised filtration system. The water that came out was clearer, but Kim Tae shook his head. Still not safe to drink. Filtration only removes some contaminants. We need to kill the microorganisms. Kill them, the Morden cadet asked, their voice high with stress. Boiling water kills bacteria, viruses, and parasites, Kim Tae explained. He found a metal cup in his kit and filled it with filtered water. Heat destroys their cellular structure. Kim Tae placed the cup near the fire, using stones to create a stable platform. As the water began to heat, small bubbles formed on the bottom of the cup. The water is changing state, observed the Brinko cadet with scientific interest, despite their obvious fear. When it reaches 100 degrees Celsius, it will boil, Kim Tae said. We need to maintain that temperature for at least 1 minute to ensure all harmful organisms are destroyed. The water began to bubble and steam. The students watched in fascination and horror as the liquid transformed into vapor. To them, this was like watching matter being destroyed and recreated. "This is basic water purification," Kim Tae said, as the water cooled. "Every human learns this as a child." He lifted the cup and, without hesitation, drank the water. The effect on his students was immediate and profound. Several made sounds of distress. The Vexstar cadet's form went completely dark. The Quanto cadet suit began emergency protocols. "You consumed liquid that was contaminated with living organisms," the Morden cadet said, their voice barely audible. "After exposing it to uncontrolled combustion reactions. Now it's safe to drink," Kim Tae said, finishing the cup. "Clean water is essential for survival. Without it, you'll die in 3 days." The students stared at him in stunned silence. What Kim Tae had just demonstrated was beyond their comprehension. He had taken dangerous contaminated water and made it safe using nothing but materials found in nature and controlled fire. "This is basic survival knowledge," Kim Tae continued. "Every human adult can do this. We teach it to children at summer camps." "Children," whispered the Yelana cadet. "Of course. How else would they learn?" Kim Tae began cleaning up his materials. "Tomorrow, we'll cover food, procurement, and preparation. We'll learn to identify edible plants and, if necessary, how to catch and prepare small animals." Okay. The word animals caused another wave of distress among the students. The Morden cadet's exoskeleton began showing stress cracks. "Will be ... hunting?" the Vexstar cadet asked. "Only if plant food isn't available," Kim Tae said casually. "It's important to know all your options." As the students filed out of the chamber, they moved slowly, like beings who had just witnessed something beyond their understanding. They had signed up for what they thought would be a simple course about emergency equipment. Instead, they had just watched their instructor demonstrate what they considered advanced chemistry and physics using primitive tools. He had consumed potentially lethal liquid after treating it with controlled combustion, and he had done it all with the casual confidence of someone performing a routine task. The Vexstar cadet paused at the chamber door. "Instructor Kim Tae, what classification of world do humans consider hostile?" Kim Tae thought for a moment. "Anything above Class 8 usually requires special preparation." "Why, in your home world, Earth is Class 12, Kim Tae said. "Pretty standard for inhabited worlds." Day 3 of the survival course arrived with fewer students than before. Kim Tae counted only 9 cadets as they entered the simulation chamber. The Morden cadet explained that 3 of their classmates had requested transfers to what they called less intensive courses. "Where did they go?" Kim Tae asked. "Advanced quantum physics and interdimensional navigation," the Vexstar cadet replied, their crystalline form still flickering with stress from the previous day's water lesson. They said those courses were easier to understand. Kim Tae nodded, though he found it strange that his students considered quantum physics easier than basic survival skills. He had reset the simulation chamber to show a different environment today. Rain clouds gathered overhead, and the air felt heavy with moisture. "Today, we learn about shelter," Kim Tae announced. "Protection from the elements is crucial for survival. Without proper shelter, exposure can kill you in hours." The students looked around the chamber nervously. The artificial weather system began producing a light drizzle that made the ground muddy and slippery. "Our emergency kits have shelter pods," the Quintal cadet said, their voice bubbling through their suit's speaker. "They deploy automatically and maintain perfect environmental conditions." "And what happens when your shelter pod is damaged or lost?" Kim Tae asked. The question hung in the air like the increasing moisture. The students had never considered this possibility. Their technology was so reliable that equipment failure was not something they prepared for. "Tae, you'll learn to build shelter using only materials you can find in nature," Kim Tae said. He gestured to the forest around them. "Everything we need is right here." The students looked at the trees, rocks, and undergrowth with confusion. To them, these were just natural objects. They couldn't imagine how such things could become sheltered. Kim Tae began walking around the area, pointing out different materials. These fallen logs will be our main support structure. The smaller branches can be woven together for walls. These broad leaves will help keep out rain. You intend to manipulate raw planetary matter with your bare hands? A Vexstar cadet asked, their voice chiming with disbelief. Of course, Kim Tae said. He knelt down and began examining a fallen log that was about as thick as his leg. First, we need to find a good location. Look for high ground to avoid flooding, but not so high that wind becomes a problem. He stood up and walked to a spot between two large trees. This is perfect. The trees will provide natural anchors, and the slight slope will drain water away from our shelter. Kim Tae returned to the fallen log and lifted one end. The students watched in amazement as he dragged the heavy piece of wood across the ground. His muscles strained with the effort, but he moved the log without any mechanical assistance. How was your body able to generate such force? The Brinko cadet asked through their translator. Humans are built for physical work, Kim Tae explained. Positioning the log between the two trees, our muscles and bones evolved for lifting, carrying, and building. He began gathering more logs, creating a basic framework. The students watched from a safe distance as Kim Tae lifted, pulled, and arranged the heavy materials. To them, his casual manipulation of objects weighing hundreds of pounds was like watching a demonstration of superhuman strength. This is the basic structure, Kim Tae said, stepping back to examine his work. Now we need to fill in the walls and make it weatherproof. He began collecting smaller branches and showed the students how to weave them between the main supports. His hands moved quickly and confidently, creating a basket-like pattern that grew stronger with each added branch. The weaving technique distributes weight evenly, he explained. Each branch supports the others, making the whole structure stronger than any individual piece. The Yelana cadet watched with fascination as Kim Tae's hands worked. Your skin, tissue, shows no damage from contact with the rough materials. Kim Tae looked at his hands, which were dirty and had a few small scratches. This is normal. Human skin is designed to handle contact with natural materials. A few scratches are nothing to worry about. The concept that humans could touch rough, unprocessed materials without injury was difficult for the students to understand. Their species either had protective coverings or avoided direct contact with anything that wasn't smooth and safe. Now for insulation, Kim Tae said. He began gathering dried leaves, grass, and small twigs. These materials trap air, which helps maintain body temperature. He showed them how to layer the materials inside the shelter, creating a thick carpet on the ground and padding on the walls. The students watched in growing amazement as the simple structure began to look like something that could actually protect a person. This is basic construction, Kim Tae said. Every human child learns these principles. We call it Building A. 4 children construct defensive structures, the Morden cadet asked, their antennae twitching with nervous energy. For fun, Kim Tae replied. Human children enjoy building things with their hands. It's how we learn basic engineering. The rain began falling harder, and Kim Tae demonstrated how to create proper drainage around the shelter. He used his hands to dig small channels that would direct water away from the structure. You're excavating earth manually, the Vexstar cadet observed, without protective equipment. Dirt won't hurt you, Kim Tae said, his hands now completely covered in mud. It's just soil and organic matter. He finished the drainage system and crawled inside the shelter to test it. The structure was about 6 feet long and 4 feet wide, with just enough height for a person to lie down comfortably. This shelter will keep you dry and warm, Kim Tae called from inside. It's not fancy, but it will keep you alive. The students stared at the shelter in amazement. What Kim Tae had built looked primitive to them, but they could see that it was functional. Rain was falling steadily now, but the inside of the shelter remained dry. The construction time was approximately 2 hours, the Brenko cadet noted, using only manual labor and natural materials. Stats about average, Kim Tae said, crawling back out. With practice, you can build a basic shelter in under an hour. He began showing them how to create a raised sleeping platform using more logs and branches. Sleeping on the ground draws heat away from your body. This platform provides insulation and keeps you warmer. The students watched as Kim Tae lashed the logs together using strips of bark and vine. His movements were efficient and confident, showing the skill of someone who had done this many times before. Now comes the most important part, Kim Tae said, settling down on the platform. Okay, testing the shelter by actually using it. He laid down on the platform and closed his eyes. The students watched in stunned silence as their instructor calmly rested inside the primitive structure while rain fell around them. You intend to sleep in this construction? Quintal Cadet asked. Of course, Kim Tae said. Shelter is only good if you can actually live in it. Sometimes you might have to sleep in a place like this for days or weeks. The word weeks caused several students to step back. The idea of living in such primitive conditions for an extended period was beyond their comprehension. What about atmospheric control? The Ilana cadet asked. Temperature regulation, air filtration. You regulate temperature with your body heat and the insulation, Kim Tae explained. The shelter design allows for natural air circulation. As for filtration, fresh air is usually clean enough to breathe. He sat up and looked at his students. This is what we call roughing it, living with basic shelter and minimal comfort. Roughing it. The Morden cadet repeated the unfamiliar phrase. It means surviving with less than ideal conditions, Kim Tae said. Sometimes you have to sleep on the ground, eat simple food, and go without modern conveniences. The students exchanged glances, filled with horror. Their civilizations were built on comfort and convenience. The idea of voluntarily living without these things was almost impossible to understand. Do humans often engage in this roughing it behavior? The Vexstar cadet asked. All the time, Kim Tae said. We call it camping. Many humans do it for fun during their free time. The silence that followed was profound. The students were processing the information that humans voluntarily subjected themselves to primitive living conditions for entertainment, for fun. Brenko cadet asked weakly. Sure. Getting away from technology and living simply for a while can be very relaxing, Kim Tae said. Many human families go camping together several times a year. He stood up and began collecting his tools. Tomorrow, we'll learn about identifying edible plants and basic food preparation. We'll also cover what to do if plant food isn't available. The students filed out of the chamber slowly, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. Their instructor had built a functional shelter using nothing but natural materials and his bare hands. He had done it in 2 hours, and he considered it basic knowledge as they walked back through the academy corridors. The Vexter cadet spoke quietly to the others. I am beginning to understand why humans are considered excellent explorers and colonists. They can literally create habitable structures from raw planetary materials. The Ilana cadet added, using only their physical capabilities. And they do it voluntarily, the Morden cadet said, their voice filled with awe, for recreational purposes. Day 5 brought only 7 students to the training chamber. Kim Tae was not surprised by the smaller group. Word had spread through the academy about his unusual teaching methods. Other instructors had begun referring to his course as advanced survival training rather than basic instruction. The remaining students entered the chamber quietly. They had lost their initial confidence and now approached each lesson with nervous anticipation. The simulation today showed a dense forest with thick undergrowth and shadows that could hide unseen dangers. Today, we learn about predator awareness, Kim Tae announced. Understanding animal behavior can save your life. The word predator caused immediate tension among the students. The Vexstar cadet's crystalline form began flickering rapidly. Morden cadet's exoskeleton made stress sounds. Predators, a Quintal cadet asked through their suit speaker, could mean aggressive life forms. I mean animals that hunt other animals for food, Kim Tae explained. Q. Most planets with complex ecosystems have predator species. You need to know how to recognize their signs and avoid them. He led the group to an area where he had prepared various examples. In the soft earth, he had created different types of tracks using molds from his training kit. These are paw prints from a large carnivore, Kim Tae said, pointing to deep impressions in the mud. See how the claws extend beyond the pad? That indicates a predator rather than a plant eater. The students gathered around the tracks carefully, maintaining what they considered a safe distance. To them, even the prints of a dangerous animal seemed threatening. How large was this creature? The Alana cadet asked, their voice barely above a whisper. Kim Tae measured the print with his hand. Based on the size and depth, probably about 200 pounds, medium-sized for a forest predator. 200 pounds of aggressive biomass. The Brinko cadet translated through their suit. With natural weapons. Not necessarily aggressive, Kim Tae corrected. Most predators avoid humans if possible. They prefer easier prey. But if cornered or protecting young, they can be dangerous. He moved to another area where he had scattered various materials. This is scat. Animal droppings can tell you a lot about what lives in an area. The students recoiled as Kim Tae knelt down to examine the simulated waste material. He used a stick to separate it, showing pieces of bone and fur mixed in. See these bone fragments? This confirms we're dealing with a carnivore. The freshness tells us how recently the animal was here. You examined waste products directly, the Morden cadet asked, their compound eyes showing distress. It's important information, Kim Tae said matter-of-factly. You can learn what animals eat, how large they are, and when they pass through an area. He stood up and pointed to scratches on a nearby tree trunk. Claw marks showed territorial behavior. Predators mark their territory to warn other animals away. Kim Tae demonstrated how to measure the height and spacing of the marks. This tells us the size of the animal and its reach. Important information if you need to stay out of its territory. The students watched as their instructor calmly analyzed evidence of dangerous predators. What terrified them seemed routine to him. Now we talk about avoiding predators, Kim Tae continued. Most hunting happens at dawn and dusk. During these times, you want to be in your shelter or in a secure location. What if avoidance fails? The Vexter cadet asked. Then you need to know basic self-defense, Kim Tae said. He walked to a pile of materials he had gathered earlier. Sometimes you have to protect yourself. The phrase self-defense caused another wave of alarm among the students. They had never imagined physically confronting a dangerous animal. Kim Tae picked up a straight piece of wood about 6 feet long. This is a basic spear, simple to make and effective for defense. He demonstrated how to sharpen one end using a rough stone, scraping the wood until it formed a sharp point. The students watched in fascination and horror as he created a weapon from natural materials. The key is keeping distance between you and the predator, Kim Tae explained, holding the spear in a defensive position. You thrust from the side, not straight forward. Aim for the chest or shoulder area. He demonstrated the proper stance and thrusting motion. The students backed away as he moved the sharpened weapon through the air. You would engage in physical combat with a predatory life form, the Quano cadet asked, their voice bubbling with disbelief. Only as a last resort, Kim Tae said. But sometimes you have no choice. If you're cornered, you fight. He set down a spear and picked up a collection of stones. These can be thrown to scare away predators or used with a sling for more accuracy. Kim Tae demonstrated how to make a simple sling using a strip of cloth. He placed a stone in a pouch and whirled it overhead before releasing. The stone flew across the chamber and struck a tree with a loud crack. The sound made several students jump. The Morton cadet's exoskeleton showed visible stress fractures. Projectile weapons, the Brinko cadet observed, created from basic materials. Humans have been making and using tools for thousands of years, Kim Tae said. It's one of our species' defining characteristics. He moved to another area where he had prepared materials for trap construction. Sometimes the best defense is early warning. Simple traps can alert you to approaching animals. Kim Tae demonstrated how to create a basic snare using cord and a bent branch. This won't hurt a large predator, but it will make noise when triggered. That gives you time to prepare or escape. The students watched as he set up the trigger mechanism. His hands moved with practiced skill, showing familiarity with concepts they found terrifying. There are also passive defense methods, Kim Tae continued. Making noise, appearing larger than you are, and showing confidence can scare away many predators. He demonstrated by raising his arms above his head and shouting loudly. The sudden noise and aggressive posture made the students scatter. Most animals will avoid a confrontation if they think you might be dangerous, Kim Tae explained. Predators prefer easy prey. If you look like trouble, they'll usually find something else to hunt. This is psychological warfare, the Vexter cadet said, their form flickering with stress. I guess you could call it that, Kim Tae agreed. Hopping is a useful survival skill. The concept that humans regularly engaged in psychological warfare with apex predators was almost too much for the students to process. What if the bluffing fails? The Yelena cadet asked. Then you use the spear, Kim Tae said simply. Or you run if you can. Sometimes survival means making hard choices quickly. He gathered his demonstration materials and looked at his remaining students. The most important thing to remember is that predators are just animals trying to survive, like you. They're not evil or malicious. Understanding their behavior helps you coexist safely. Coexist, the Morton cadet repeated. You can't eliminate all dangers from the environment, Kim Tae explained. You learn to live with them safely. Humans have shared planets with dangerous predators for our entire history. The students were quiet as they processed this information. Their species had either evolved on worlds without dangerous predators or had eliminated such threats long ago. The idea of coexisting with deadly animals was foreign to them. Tomorrow is our final lesson, Kim Tae announced. We'll put together everything you've learned in a practical exercise. As the students left the chamber, they moved slowly and carefully. Each lesson had expanded their understanding of what survival really meant. They had learned that humans considered predator awareness and self-defense to be basic knowledge. The Vexter cadet paused at the exit. Instructor Kim Tae, do human children learn these predator defense techniques? Of course, Kim Tae replied. We teach children to be aware of their surroundings and how to stay safe. Why? And they practice making weapons. Sure. Making spears and slings is a common activity at youth camps. Kids enjoy learning traditional skills. The students' crystalline form went completely dark for a moment. Human children voluntarily learn combat techniques against predatory life forms. It's educational, Kim Tae said. Plus, it's fun to learn how your ancestors survived. As the students walked back through the academy corridors, they shared a new understanding. Human children learn skills that would be considered advanced military training by their civilizations, and they did it for fun. The final lesson tomorrow would complete their education in human survival methods. None of them were sure they were ready for what Kim Tae might teach them next. but they were beginning to understand why humans were considered the most adaptable species in the galaxy. The final day of the survival course arrived with only 4 students remaining. Kim-tae stood at the entrance of the simulation chamber, watching his small group of survivors enter quietly. The Vexta cadet, the Cointel cadet, and the Brinko cadet had endured lessons that pushed them far beyond their comfort zones. "Today is your final test," Kim-tae announced. "A 6-hour survival scenario where you'll demonstrate everything you've learned." The chamber had been programmed to simulate a harsh wilderness environment. Rocky terrain mixed with dense forest and storm clouds gathered overhead. A small stream ran through the area, but it looked muddy and uninviting. "Your task is simple," Kim-tae continued. "Find and purify water, build a basic shelter, and identify potential hazards in the area. You'll work individually, but I'll be here to help if needed." The students looked at the challenging environment with expressions of determination mixed with terror. Over the past week, they had learned that human survival training was unlike anything they had imagined. "You have 6 hours," Kim-tae said, checking his timepiece. "Begin whenever you're ready." The Vexter cadet was the first to move. Their crystalline form approached the stream cautiously, remembering the water purification lesson. They began gathering materials for a filtration system, their movements careful but more confident than before. The Quintal cadet struggled with the concept of building fire, but they managed to create sparks using the flint and steel method Kim-tae had taught them. Their aquatic nature made the process difficult, but they persevered. Kim-tae watched proudly as his students applied the skills they had learned. They were moving slowly and making mistakes, but they were actually doing it. These beings from peaceful worlds were learning to survive using human methods. The Yelana cadet surprised everyone by successfully constructing a basic lean-to shelter. Their reptilian flexibility helped them weave branches together, creating a structure that looked functional. "Not bad," Kim-tae called out. "Remember to create drainage around the base." As the students worked, Kim-tae noticed movement at the chamber entrance. A young human woman entered, carrying a backpack and moving with easy confidence. "Instructor Kim-tae," she called out cheerfully. "Sorry, I'm late. Admiral Lee sent me to help with the final demonstration." "Part, Kana," Kim-tae replied with a smile. "Perfect timing, students. This is Cadet Park Hannah. She's here to assist with today's exercise." Park Hannah was barely 20 years old, with an enthusiastic smile and energy that seemed boundless. She looked around the simulated wilderness environment with obvious excitement. "Oh, this looks fun," she said, dropping her backpack. "Mind if I set up while your students work?" "Go ahead," Kim-tae said. "Show them how it's done." What happened next changed everything the alien students thought they knew about human capabilities. Park Hannah walked to the stream and quickly assessed the water quality. Within minutes, she had constructed an efficient filtration system using materials she gathered from the immediate area. Her movements were swift and confident, like someone who had done this countless times. "The water flow rate suggests good mineral content," she commented casually while gathering tinder. "Should be safe once we boil it." She created fire in less than 30 seconds using friction method that Kim-tae had demonstrated. The alien students stopped their own work to stare as flames appeared almost instantly under her hands. "Nice dry tinder today," Park Hannah said, feeding small sticks to the growing fire. "Weather's perfect for this kind of exercise." While her water heated, she began constructing a shelter. Her hands moved with incredible speed and skill, weaving branches and positioning logs as if she were assembling a puzzle she had solved many times before. The alien students watched in stunned amazement. Hours to attempt poorly. This young human was accomplishing in minutes with obvious ease. "Hannah's one of our best students," Kim-tae explained to his shocked class. "She grew up camping with her family. Camping the Vexstar cadet asked weakly. Sure, Park Hannah called out from where she was completing her shelter. My parents took me hiking and camping every weekend when I was little. This stuff is like breathing to me. She had finished her water purification and was now drinking the treated liquid while simultaneously adding finishing touches to her shelter. The entire process had taken her less than an hour. Want me to show them some food? Procurement techniques, Park Hannah asked Kim Tae before he could answer. She was already moving through the simulated forest, pointing out edible plants and demonstrating proper identification methods. Her knowledge was extensive and her confidence absolute. These berries are safe, she said, picking a few to taste. The leaves on this plant make good tea, and the roots are edible if you cook them properly. The alien students followed her like beings, witnessing a master at work. Everything they had struggled to learn, she performed with casual expertise. How old were you when you learned these skills? The Quintal cadet asked through their suit. Speaker, I started camping when I was about 5 years old, Park Hannah replied. By the time I was 10, I could survive on my own for a weekend. Most human kids can. The silence that followed was profound. The alien students stared at this young human who possessed survival skills that exceeded anything their civilizations considered possible. Most human children can survive independently in wilderness environments, the Brinko cadet asked. For short periods. Sure, Park Hannah said. It's pretty normal. We have youth organizations that teach outdoor skills. Millions of human children participate every year. Kim Tae watched as the full impact of this revelation hit his students. They had spent a week learning what they considered impossibly advanced survival techniques. Now they discovered that human children learned these skills as recreational activities. Admiral Lee Dong arrived as scheduled for the graduation ceremony. He looked pleased to see that 4 students had completed the course. Congratulations, he said to the surviving students. You've completed one of our most challenging basic courses. Basic, the Ilana cadet repeated. Of course, Admiral Lee replied. Instructor Kim Tae teaches fundamental survival skills, nothing too advanced. The Admiral looked around the chamber, noting the shelters and fire pits the students had created. Very good work. These skills might save your lives someday. He turned to Kim Tae. I have your next assignment ready. Intermediate survival skills. 15 students from various species. What does intermediate level cover? The Vexstar cadet asked nervously. Advanced shelter construction, long-term food storage, weather prediction, and basic combat techniques, Admiral Lee listed casually. Standard progression from basic skills. The 4 graduating students exchanged glances filled with horror and respect. What they had just endured was merely the beginning of human survival education. Instructor Kim Tae, the Vexstar cadet, said formally. We understand now why humans are considered the most adaptable species in the galaxy. You survived because you were willing to learn, Kim Tae replied. That's the most important survival skill of all. As the ceremony concluded, each student received their survival training certificate. They had earned credentials that would be respected throughout the galaxy, but more importantly, they had gained understanding. Humans didn't just survive on dangerous worlds, thrived on them. What other species considered impossible challenges, humans treated as basic life skills. They taught these abilities to their children as normal education. Park Hannah packed up her demonstration materials with the same casual efficiency she had shown all day. Thanks for letting me help, she said to Kim Tae. This was fun. As she walked away, the alien students watched with new appreciation. His young human, barely past childhood by galactic standards, possessed survival capabilities that surpassed most trained professionals from their worlds. Next week, intermediate class starts, Kim Tae announced. We'll cover surviving in extreme weather conditions and extended wilderness living. The 4 graduates looked at each other with expressions of amazement and terror. They had survived basic human survival training, but they now understood that it was only the beginning. "Will you be taking the intermediate course?" the Quintal cadet asked the others. "But what we've learned," the Yelana cadet replied. "How can we not?" T had discovered that human survival training was unlike anything else in the galaxy. It was challenging, terrifying, and absolutely essential for anyone who wanted to explore the dangerous universe beyond safe. Civilized worlds, as they filed out of the chamber, each carrying their hard-earned certificates, the students shared a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. Humans weren't just explorers and colonists. They were the survivors who could adapt to any environment and thrive where others would perish. And what they called basic training was preparation for a universe far more dangerous and wonderful than most species could imagine.